for your introduction. Thanks everybody for your coming. So this morning I'm going to talk about the ability of milk lactate concentration for identifying quarter with high somatic cell count in dairy cattle at dry off. So I'm going to start with brief introduction about mastitis. I believe everybody in this room know that the mastitis is probably the most important health problem in dairy farm worldwide. So mastitis comes in two forms. When the udder or milk showing any abnormalities, so it's called clinical mastitis. But the problem when the udder and the milk looks normal and the milk has bacteria in combination with high somatic cell count. In that case, we call subclinical mastitis. So the prevalence of subclinical mastitis is 40 times higher than the clinical mastitis. This means that if you have one cow suffer from clinical mastitis, you have to expect that you have around 40 cows suffer from subclinical mastitis and you don't know. So the question is, what's the problem of subclinical mastitis? So everything is normal, milk is normal, udder is normal, cow health looks normal. But the problem of the subclinical mastitis is subclinical mastitis causes direct drop in milk production. So several studies reported negative correlation between the somatic cell count and the milk production. Translate that to money. Cow with somatic cell count around 200,000 cost to the owner around $90. Increase the somatic cell count to 400, so it's gonna cost the owner around 110. And 75% of this cost is due to loss in milk production. Not only that, but subclinical mastitis cause changes in around 20 parameter or 20 component of the milk, which has negative impact on the processing capacity and shelf life of milk. Furthermore, the problem of subclinical mastitis not stop at the level of the cow suffer from subclinical mastitis, but this cow act as a source of the infection. It's gonna distribute the infection to the healthier cow. So subclinical mastitis is a hidden enemy, and to control it, to treat it, you have to identify it. And this is the biggest aim of our project. As we mentioned that the subclinical mastitis cause changes in around 20 parameter or 20 component of the milk. One of these components is lactate. So what is lactate? So everybody in this room know that the lactate is physiological byproduct of anaerobic glycolysis, which enhances in case of decreased oxygen tension and increase the rate of increase the metabolic rate of the cell. And this is what happened in mastitis. So in mastitic milk, so the concentration of oxygen is decreased and the activity of somatic cell all the time at the peak because it's all the time fight the infection. So where milk lactate come from? So lactate normally present in the milk with concentration around 0.1 millimole and mostly come from circulation. However, in case of mastitic milk and the presence of bacteria, so some of these bacteria are lactate producing bacteria such as group B streptococcus, including Streptogalactia. And you can see the huge difference between the Streptogalactia or group P streptococcus and the E. coli regarding the production of lactate. But all these sources is not the main source for the milk lactate concentration. The main source for lactate concentration or the milk lactate is the somatic cell count. There is two important case studies reported that there is a positive linear association between the somatic cell count and milk lactate concentration. In bacterial meningitis in human, they found that the neutrophil, increase the neutrophil associated with increase the cerebrospinal fluid lactate concentration. So we can probably say that the neutrophil is the main source for the milk lactate concentration for the higher milk lactate concentration in mastitic milk. So milk lactate concentration is increased around 10-fold in subclinical mastitis and around 40-fold in clinical mastitis. So the important question right now, so why milk lactate over other mastitis indicator? The answer of this question is because the biggest advantage of milk lactate is the extent and the speed of its concentration change, where the milk lactate increased within 24 hours from the infection. So you can catch the infection, the new infection, within 24 hours just measuring or monitoring the milk lactate. So the last few years, so there is several handheld meters are available in the market for monitoring plasma lactate concentration and used for evaluating the physical performance and optimizing the training protocol for athletes. One of the most popular meter used in the United States is called Lactate Plus. So why it's popular? Because it's the cheapest meter available in the market. So the cost of the strips around 1.8. The next meter, the cost of the strip cost around 2.5 or $3. So this is the cheapest meter available in the market. And the second important character for this meter is the measuring range. So this meter measures lactate concentration from 0.3 to 25 millimole. This meter uses electrochemical lactate oxidase biosensor, and we believe that this meter gonna work good in milk. So our hypothesis was we hypothesized that the milk lactate concentration measured by lactate plus handheld meter will provide a clinical useful method for identifying quarter with high somatic cell count. And consequently, our objective for this study is to evaluate the clinical performance of measuring of milk lactate concentration measured by lactate plus for identifying quarter with high somatic cell count compared to California Mastitis Test, which is the most popular method used in the practice. So we done this study in University of Illinois Dairy Farm, which around 5 minutes walk from the vet school. So this is the farm, here is the vet school, and interesting, we have a nice park here, so designed by Japanese guy and called Japanese Park. We collected around 419 quarter 4 milk sample from 105 cows at the last week of lactation. So why we picked this time? Because as you can see on this figure that the highest rate of the new infection occur at dry off, and we used the 4 milk or the cisternal milk that we collected the milk sample within 50 seconds from touching the udder, because the 4 milk or the cisternal milk is considered the most predictive fraction of the milk used for diagnosis of subclinical mastitis. We measured the somatic cell count quantitatively using the CMT, and quantitatively using Delival cell counter. The Delival cell counter measuring range starting from 10,000 to 4 million cells per milli. After that, we measured the milk lactate concentration using lactate plus. So the meter show low when the concentration of milk lactate is lower than 0.3. For statistical analysis, For the correlation or the association between the somatic cell count and the milk lactate concentration, we calculated the Spearman correlation. And based on that, we identified the quarter with high somatic cell count. As we're gonna see in the next slide, we found that the meter showing higher correlation at the level of 1 million cell per milli. So we identified the quarter with high somatic cell count is higher than or equal 1 million cell per milli. To characterize the relationship between the lactate plus handheld meter and CMT comparing to the Delival as a reference method, we used logistic regression. So we built a ROC curve for each logistic regression model, and we calculated the area under the curve for each ROC curve. Sensitivity and specificity at the optimal cut point was calculated for each ROC curve using Yoden index. Also, we calculated the positive likelihood ratio by dividing the sensitivity with 1 minus the specificity. So the methods or the test with positive likelihood ratio more than 10 is considered excellent diagnostic test. B less than 0.5 was considered significant in this study. So for the results, as you can see, this is a scatter plot characterize the relationship between the Delival somatic cell count and milk lactate concentration. And you can see that the lactate plus handheld meter started to correlate excellent with milk lactate concentration, which supports the earlier finding. Here is the Davis study in 2004. It showed the same result, that the milk lactate concentration measured by laboratory methods was correlated significantly with the somatic cell count after threshold 1 million. And this is support the fact that the main source for milk lactate concentration is the somatic cell present in the milk, mainly neutrophil. However, CMT showed higher correlation, so that CMT is still showing the highest correlation with Delival somatic cell count, but you know it's semi-quantitative, so it's different from one to one, different from study to study. But in this study, CMT showing highest or higher correlation comparing to milk lactate concentration. For the logistic regression, so this is the ROC curve. So the result of logistic regression showed that the milk lactate concentration of more than or equal 0.4 provide an excellent quantitative test for identifying quarter with high somatic cell count with higher sensitivity compared to CMT. But as we mentioned that CMT more than 1 is still more accurate test for diagnosis of subclinical mastitis or the quarter with high somatic cell count. Interesting enough, we found that the agreement between the lactate plus handheld meter and the Delival was higher than the CMT and Delival. So the dark blue box indicated exact agreement, and the light blue box indicated partial agreement. So the bigger dark blue box, so the more agreement between the two methods. So lactate plus showing a higher agreement with Delival cell counter compared to California Mastitis Test. From this information, we conclude that measuring milk lactate concentration provide a clinical useful method for identifying quarter with high somatic cell count. But in this study, CMT is still an accurate and less expensive test for identifying quarter with high somatic cell count. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I will be more than happy to receive any question or comment if you have. Thank you.